Joining us now is Kachi Ofia with stories trending around the world.
Good morning.
You can be sure she will catch all the stories.
I'm happy to catch them. How are we doing this one, Rifai? How are you feeling? Are you catching?
Actually, you know, you are the only first person that have acknowledged that they are policymakers. So my friend is policymakers.
I was very specific as to my angles. Wow. I wish you all understood the inside joke.
Policy making should not extend to change of calendar.
No, it will never. I'm very fair, I'm very just, and I make sure I look out for the well-being of everyone. By that, please all came from your heart. Good morning to you viewers. Let us begin what's trending today. Beginning with President Bola Tinubu and First Lady Senator Oluremi Tinubu. They have congratulated Nigerian workers as the country joins the global community in marking this year's Workers' Day. In a statement released on Thursday, which was yesterday, President Tinubu reaffirmed his administration's commitment to prioritizing workers' welfare. He also promised continued collaboration with Labour to drive national development, marking the day on his official X handle. Official at official ABAT, the president described the Nigerian workers as the engine of the economy and the secret to the national growth. He did put out a tweet. Let's take a look at that. He said to every Nigerian worker, happy Workers' Day. You are the engine of our economy and the secret of our nation's growth. Our administration has and will continue to prioritize workers' welfare. Together, we will make Nigeria great again. Here's to everyone, young and old, entrepreneur and employee, whose contributions shape our homes, communities, and country. Happy Workers' Day, Nigeria. Now, of course, this should be exciting. But the First Lady now went on to salute the resilience of Nigerian workers, calling them the backbone of national development and a vital force behind Nigeria's progress. Let's take a look. Well, let's also talk about the fact that the former Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi and his PDP counterpart Atiku Abubakar, they have also celebrated Nigerians on Workers' Day. Now, Peter Obi praised the resilience and commitment of Nigerian workers despite harsh economic conditions, and he expressed concern over the rising unemployment rate, now at 35%. He urged the federal government to create more job opportunities to curb crime and social unrest. While Atiku described Nigerian workers as the indomitable engine driving the nation towards prosperity, he commended their silent heroism in bearing the burden of the country's economic challenges. Now, I look at these comments and remember the Senate president's view on poverty, how he said, you know, poverty is not a crime. While I agree Nigerian workers are resilient, Nigerian workers are strong, but I don't think it's a pat on our back to say we're good at suffering. I think it's more about, it will be great to be resilient in the face of structure, in the face of adequate infrastructure. Our resilience would even be better because we will be healthier and we'll be safer to show how truly resilient we are. So it still goes back to that. I would have loved to hear more about how the government is putting things in place to ensure that Nigerian workers can be at their most efficient positions, not just celebrating resilience. Resilience in the midst of suffering is headache. So are we celebrating headache on Workers' Day? Is that what we're celebrating?
Actually, that's what we're celebrating in this country. And you see,
when we talk about things like resilience, I think to a large extent, our leaders do not even know what they call resilience. Because if people are working so hard and they do not get what they are working for, it's not being resilient. It's being poor. It's being put in a gulag of some sort. It's been, you know, destroyed. Their lives have been destroyed minimally. An average Nigerian worker is worth nothing today. Because when you look at it, how much is the 70,000 naira in US dollars?
$46.
$46. What's the daily poverty rate? They say when you live on less than $2 per day, right?
Yeah.
Okay, $2 times 30 days.
That's 60.
$60. $60 minus 46.
That is
14. So now an average Nigerian worker with a minimum wage is $14 shy of the poverty threshold. An average Nigerian worker, what am I saying, is it needs $14 extra to at least be able to attain the poverty threshold, living in abject poverty threshold. And that's the minimum wage you are going on with. And we live in an economy where you have a pass-through effect of the dollar. Almost everything has a knock-on effect of the dollar. Banana has a knock-on effect. And this is an economy with 24% inflation rate. This is an economy that basic healthcare services are almost non-existent. Out-of-pocket payment is pervasive. Let's say that worker with that 70,000 has got malaria once a month. How much you need to treat malaria today? Maybe it's a very intense case of malaria that has to go to the hospital. What if that worker is on blood pressure drugs? Today, we know the cost of drugs like amlodipine and everything. Some blood pressure drug will set you back over 20,000 naira. And you finish buying those blood pressure drugs and you have to also eat. And you earn 70,000 naira. So net out 20,000 naira for sometimes, in some cases for blood pressure, or 20,000 naira minus the minimum wage. And this man might have a family. So it's sad for an average worker. They don't even understand what resilience is at all. That's why we are telling this government to do well for the workers, to do well for the people. But we still keep hearing people say poverty is a virtue. And these people are high up there and rich. It's a sad workers' day for Nigeria, and we keep saying that. This government must be able to do something to alleviate, probably make healthcare more accessible, subsidize all those other areas of living. Let it be qualitative. Let's even have something for the people, because this is not easy. God only knows how people survive.
Absolutely. I mean, truly the most valid points were made. You know, at the beginning of the show, I started by saying that just a gentle reminder that this day, when this movement began in the 1800s, it was around advocacy for an 8-hour working day. Because anything beyond that, by generally global best practice standards, is actually an unfair way of treating your workers. So there's various cushions that are supposed to be created and implemented for workers, just as a framework, to be able to say, this is the dignity in labor, this is the justice, this is the sacred nature of going to work. So I think one conversation or one question we needed to ask ourselves yesterday, or that we're asking ourselves today, is there dignity in labor in Nigeria? We spoke about CBEX. We speak about, cases of fraud, corruption, all manner of crime. And you find that young people are leaning towards those terrible, despicable activities. Why? Because there is no more dignity in labor. The hardest working of our society are earning the least. How is that tenable? It's not possible. And even those with skills, we had some comments that were made yesterday that, for me, I thought were extremely naive and insensitive at best. Because we have graduates in this country who have a degree in something, but can't even work in those industries because there are no jobs.
Dr. Bati mentioned the Zobo.
Absolutely. Professors are selling Zobo, according to Dr. Abati. Because there is no, and even where the work is, you ask yourself, where is the dignity in this labor? So I think there's bigger conversations, bigger advocacy that needs to be done around restoring dignity to labor. Yes, salary is important, but what are all the other safety nets that protect the worker and make it a proud day again for me to say, I'm waking up and I'm going to work?
Okay, very quickly. Yesterday was Labor Day, International Workers' Day, May Day, as it is otherwise known, and we discussed it yesterday. And in line with, conventions, the organized labor in Nigeria had rallies in Abuja and elsewhere. After all, what they were told in the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, 1848, is that the workers of the world unite, and Nigerian workers united yesterday. And the point that they made, their own theme in Nigeria here, is reclaiming the civic space, right? Survivor in the midst of hardship. In other words, the theme that the Labour Congress chose highlighted the plight of the Nigerian worker. Now, the whole idea of May Day, Labor Day, Workers' Day, as I pointed out again yesterday, started in 1886, a market fair crisis in Chicago, when workers who were demanding 8 hours of work, 8 hours of recreation, 8 hours of rest, ended up losing some of their members. They were bombed out of existence. 7 persons died. And since that time, workers have united in line with the Communist Manifesto and the Second International Conference to say, look, workers deserve their rights, workers deserve respect, workers need to be well treated. That's on the part of labor yesterday. The second part of it is the response from government. President Tinubu has said, he's committed to workers' welfare. He's ready to collaborate with the Labour Congress and make sure that there's better life for Nigerian workers, because Nigerian workers are the engine room of growth. Now, there's nothing extraordinary in that. We all know that this country cannot move without productivity. The only caveat I will add here for President Tinubu is that he, as president of Nigeria, he presides over that National Minimum Wage Act. Some states have been violating the law, they've been disobeying the law, they've been disrespecting Nigerian workers by refusing to pay them even the minimum. And it's not just the public sector. Private sector. There are many private sector employers of labor who will turn around and say, well, this is a difficult working environment, and they don't pay salaries as and when due.
Yes.
And they also treat their workers shabbily.
Yes.
Organized labor has also been remiss, has also been complacent in terms of its responsibilities.
Yes.
There was a time they used to go from factory to picket and say, salaries have not been paid this month, you must pay salaries. All these labor leaders, they become elites because they have seen examples of their previous leaders hobnobbing with Asubila, also becoming governors, also becoming senators, and then you have this aspirational nonsense among labor leaders who also want to live it up. So if labor is talking about reclaiming the civic space, that return to the civic space by the labor leadership should also begin at the level of moral introspection on the part of labor leaders. However, the caveat in this regard is that I think Nigerian workers are part of the problem. I've heard people say, who are these Nigerian workers who are complaining? If you work in an environment where you are not well treated, where you are not given opportunities, where you are discriminated against, but you go to work every day. So that's the irony. That's the dilemma that we deal with. However, I think it was Mr. Peter Obi, who resolved the matter by saying that, look, the unemployment level in Nigeria is over 45%, and that the government has an obligation to look into the crisis of unemployment in Nigeria. And I agree with him in that regard, in terms of what he said. Atiku Abubakar Waziri Adamawa also made a similar point. So I don't think their points should be dismissed in terms of, say, oh, they are making partisan talk. What do you expect them to say? No. We too, as workers of Nigeria, we think that labor, everybody, all the stakeholders have identified, should focus on the worker. A laborer deserves his wages.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, now let's move on to the next story. Following the ongoing dispute in Kano around the emirship, specifically the contention between Aminu Ado Bayero and Muhammadu Sanusi II, both of whom have held the title of Emir of Kano. Aminu Ado Bayero made a public appearance as the royal father of the day at a Quranic graduation ceremony. This took place on Workers' Day on the 1st of May 2025 as an Islamia school located in Kwali Quarters, Kano Municipal. During his address, the Emir expressed joy over being part of the event and praised the unity and happiness he witnessed amongst the people. He prayed for continued peace, protection of dignity, and the preservation of faith within the community. Now, in a video making the rounds on social media, thousands of people were seen gathered to warmly welcome and celebrate the Emir's presence at the occasion. Let's take a look. Now, I think the only question I have to ask on the table today is what is going on in Kano? We've seen a lot of things play out, you know. We've seen courts of coordinate jurisdictions giving opposing judgments. We've seen cases where people are unsure as to where they stand. Is the government in Kano State about the people, or is it about the political leaders? At the end of the day, the people are the focus here, but for some reason, they seem to be pulled apart by two different strings that make it difficult for them to know exactly where they stand. As it is, there's a stay on execution that I'm aware of. There's also an appeal that is currently on ground at this time. What is going on in Kano?
Well, let me put it like this. What you have in Kano is a case of one city, two emirs. Now, but you've talked about the issues in court. Well, except I do a review of the issues in court and what the state of it is and all of that, I would not like to comment on those details. But what we know is that in this particular case, there's a lot that is traditional, there's a lot that is political, and you have talked about the legal matters. What I can just say, by way of a preliminary comment, is that beyond whatever politics or legalism that may be involved, we need peace in Kano.
Yes.
Kano is a very strategic part of Nigeria. That's why in elections, if you don't win in Kano, you don't win in Lagos, you don't win in Port Harcourt, and if there is no peace in those three strategic places, you really cannot, get through the electoral process. It is now the responsibility, again, of the Tinubu administration to make sure that whatever the matter is, in terms of the details, there should be peace in Kano. We do not want Kano to implode. The state government also has a responsibility to ensure that there is peace in Kano. Having two emirs in one city and one emir comes out for Doba, another one comes out for another event, you don't need any further education to know that this is a prescription for
disaster,
implosion, for chaos, for conflict. And that's why I think the security agencies, should monitor the situation very carefully. And, the responsibility of the government is to ensure that there is peace. If I see anything further, it will seem as if, maybe it's taking sides. That's why I said, no, I would like to take another look at what the status of the matter is in the courts. But what we just want in Kano is peace.
Yeah.
I would like to say something, but Vimba,
You have not spoken, so you have to speak.
Okay,
but I would like to say something further.
Mine is
on Kano.
just a quick comment, which is that the white man brought divide and rule to this land. It was part of how they were able to subdue and take over, because we know the struggle that we went through with colonialism and its legacy. And it's sad to see that in modern day, we continue to see these strategies of divide to conquer at play, all at the expense of the people. That's all.
Yeah.
So, the matters are clear. What is happening in Kano? Politics is at play. We can talk about legalese. What bets legal cases? Isn't it politics?
Yeah.
They will now go politicize the courts. We all saw the political shenanigan that happened on the courts.
Which is why I said coordinated restrictions, giving...
The very first thing that happened, and it dates back to when Emir Sanusi was pulled out.
Yeah.
Emir Sanusi was pulled out. Ado Bayero brought in. Because why? Emir Sanusi was against the incumbent governor. Ado Bayero was brought in. When the factions that brought Emir Sanusi in then, the what's it called, the Kwankasiya group, now that they got governor, Ado Bayero was pulled out, Emir Sanusi was brought in. Then this happened. They ejected Ado Bayero from the palace. Emir Sanusi came into the palace. Ado Bayero was staying somewhere else. At some point, they were able to keep restraints while they had court cases on and on everywhere.
That's the stay of execution.
But today now, some people are emboldening the two factions in two corners. So what is happening now is they say, oh, you come out, this come out. All of it is tied towards the dominance of Kano. All of it is tied towards 2027. And you see, it is the politicians we should talk to. They cannot desecrate our traditional institutions because they want power. And they forget that power is transient. It's just like the dominance of what transpired in Rivers. It's just all about the next election. And you see, that's why all of our politicians, a large amount of our politicians, are not leaders. Because leaders think of the next generation. Politicians think of the next election. These ones are just so concerned about the next elections in Kano. They are not thinking of the next generation, of what this aberration in Kano is. That you have two emirs at a point in Kano because of political gains. What are they doing to the future generations of Kano? They will never think about that. Please.
Or maybe the courts are not clear enough. Maybe the courts...
Everything is politics.
Maybe it's not.
Like somebody said in one, I think one of a French speaker said something. He said, responsable d'Afrique, prenons conscience. Peuple d'Afrique battant tous ces combats. Responsable d'Afrique, the leaders of Africa, please have patience on this continent. Peuple d'Afrique battant tous ces combats. People of Africa, be ready to take your continent.
Well,
and let the people matter, not politicians.
The people of Kano must matter in all of this. Let's take our next story.
The people of Kano are divided.
The people... it's a lot to look into. Let's talk about the kidnappings going on in this country. Another Nigerian woman, we've seen stories like this before, called Nemi, has raised the alarm over the disappearance of her husband, Angel Odumodu, who went missing on the 29th of April after traveling from Port Harcourt to attend events in Owerri and Nnewi. According to her post on X, formerly known as Twitter, their last communication was at 10:50 a.m. on the 29th of April when he said he was en route back to Port Harcourt. Since then, efforts to reach him have failed. The case has now been reported to the police as the family is all over social media pleading for public assistance. Now, when the story came out on Twitter, we saw a lot of people come out to speak about this, to say there's too many incidents like this happening, people disappearing, especially around this location. And the question now is, what is the government doing about it?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Was that a giggle?
So...
the truth has to be said. You see, and this also dials back to the situation as regards security in this country. It is in this country that people just miss and we don't find them.
And we move on.
And we move on. One particularly happened to me. When I was on radio, there was a bigger colleague of mine called Martin Udogi. We used to do stuff for a particular bank on radio together. Martin Udogi. Because all of a sudden Martin Udogi disappeared, I had to take the reins of the show. When Martin Udogi disappeared, till today, you've not seen Martin Udogi. And that's the kind of country we live in. I just pray this person is found. In some cases you find them, but people disappear and nothing happens.
Let's hope that he's found. Let's hope
Let's
that he's
hope and
found.
pray.
Well, this is our final story. Very important update following the announcement by his daughter that the legendary singer King Sunny Ade was missing. You know, he was recently in the news because his daughter raised concerns about his whereabouts. Well, the singer coming out himself to clarify these speculations, confirming that he's not kidnapped. His kids just simply love him too much. Let's take a look.
I wonder why people will say, I've been kidnapped, won't kidnap me, won't kidnap me. I thank God and I thank the whole nation, you, my fans, all throughout the whole world. Since about a couple of 70-something hours ago, up to now, the whole world just calling me. And I have to thank God for the love.
Well, he is healthy and he is all right. That's all for me on what's trending today.
Okay, I told you that there should be no panic.
Yeah, you did.
That King Sunny Ade, the legend himself, living legend, will show up. And in a polygamous setup, children will be children, out of love for their father.
For their father.
As King Sunny Ade himself has pointed out.
Yeah.
But nobody should miss in Nigeria.
Nobody
because
should.
we all have rights under the Constitution. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.